So what did the government do? The government decided to carry out a research and to appoint a private company, a private firm, to carry out an extensive opinion poll across many thousands of people. People who had voted yes, people who had voted no, people who had not voted at all, to try to establish in greater detail why the Irish had voted no. And as I say, what they came up with a couple of months ago was that the largest single reason, representing 42% of those who voted no, was they didn't understand the wretched thing. It's not that they were opposed to it or they were negatively disposed to it. They just didn't feel that they ought to be put in the position to be voting on something that was so detailed and technical that they didn't understand. There were other reasons having to do with the new arrangements, the business of one commissioner per country. There was a fear, there was a real fear, that the European Union would impose a common level of corporation tax across the Union, and that common level of corporation tax would be a high level of corporation tax, in keeping with the traditions in France and Scandinavia and elsewhere. And that would have undermined one of the key factors that, as I said earlier, makes Ireland such an attractive destination for investment from abroad. Our corporation tax is the lowest in the Union at 12.5%. Actually, there was no risk in the treaty that there could be a harmonized, a uniform level of corporation tax, because tax is one of the areas within the European Union where each individual member state has a veto. So it has to be a unanimous decision, and we were never going to agree with that. Another final issue where people had concerns was because the European Union has developed a common security and foreign policy in recent years, and we've seen EU peacekeepers acting under a UN mandate, but with an EU flag on their arm. Some Irish people began to fear that we would end up with a situation where where Europe would be able to impose conscription on young Irish people, and that they would be conscripted into a European army, which doesn't exist and is nowhere planned, but there was a misplaced fear in that respect. But there was nonetheless a significant number of people who had that fear. So what the government is now doing is, it has appointed or has helped establish within the Parliament an all-party committee, galvanising all of the members, all of the parties in Parliament, the great majority of which were in favour of the treaty, by the way, to analyse these opinions that people had, to analyse the reasons why the Irish voted no. And the government has promised our European partners that this December, at the meeting of heads of state and government of the European Union countries, that we will come with elements for a solution. We will come with suggestions, elements for a way forward that will enable the Union and Ireland to move forward together and have Ireland back fully in the mainstream. And that is something that would have to play out then next year and the year after, and we would be in our rightful place back as a full participant, participating at the centre of and helping to shape in our own small way the advance of European Union.
Thank you. Let's talk for a minute about the island in front of the island. I remember reading the Irish debates in the House of Commons 100 years ago, and when Ireland had not yet got its independence. And there was one of these turncoat Irish who was collaborating with the British colonial masters. And in this debate in Commons, he made the statement, I was born an Englishman. This is an Irishman talking. He said, I was born an Englishman, I am an Englishman, and I will die an Englishman. And somebody from the gallery above shouted, come on, man, have some ambition. And this is in the record of Hansard of the House of Commons. But
it's a great line.
I think so. But the relationship with Britain. Britain is an unusual country because it has the impression that the English Channel is wider than the Atlantic Ocean. Now, obviously, you do not have that impression because you are not a Eurosceptic, and obviously you used entry into the European Union to leapfrog across Britain into Europe. But that brings us to the problem of Northern Ireland. What is Northern Ireland? Is it Ireland or is it not Ireland? And where does it stand? My friend, Lord Alderdice, tells me there's no problem, we've solved it. I'm not sure whether he's telling me the truth or not, because not all Irishmen tell the truth. And so, tell us something about Northern Ireland, which incidentally, during the troublesome days, has generated a lot of its funding here in the United States. And so, what is Northern Ireland and what is the future of Northern Ireland? How do you see it 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Will we still have a problem? Or is it that we will all have been dissolved in a European-ness in which there will be no borders and no problems?
You're taking the easy ones first, huh? Yeah. Okay. The Churchill had a great remark in one of the House of Commons debates, and there's more than a grain of truth in what he said. It wasn't always the case, mind you, but it was in this instance. He said that it would do the British it would do the Irish a great deal of good to forget some of their history. And it would do the British a great deal of good to remember some of theirs. Your question, Ambassador, was almost an invitation to go back into the history, but I'm not going to do it. I think we've got to be gone by 2 o'clock tomorrow morning, I think, don't we? The situation in respect of Northern Ireland has been transformed in the past 10 or 15 years. And we now, thank goodness, have a modicum of peace and a partnership process there. We've come so far in reconciling with each other that few would have thought it possible even 15 years ago. One of the factors that enabled it to happen was precisely Ireland's membership of the European Union and the prosperity that flowed from that. It flowed from other things as well, but it flowed from that not least. The result was that Southern Ireland, which became independent in 1922 and spent much of its life in its first half century as an impoverished state, providing cattle and people for the English market. Its population, as I say, had reduced to 2.9 million by 1961. The European Union enabled us to become prosperous. Ireland now exports more than India and Australia. I beg your pardon, more than South Africa, Israel, and Brazil. More than India, more than Australia. In the year 2000 or so, we were, I think it was 2000, we were the largest single exporter of packaged software in the world, bar none, and that includes the United States and Taiwan. We have moved from being the least wealthy country in the European Union to the second wealthiest per capita after Luxembourg. And that's been an extraordinary and also an extraordinary challenging transformation within a generation. But it enabled us to do one thing. It enabled us to participate on the world stage economically and in a whole host of different areas in a much fuller a much